Deanna Songbird here. This is like a public service announcement regarding coffee enemas. I just got off of a private call with my Liberate Your Liver students, and I was sharing with them what felt like a really important update from my experience, and I would like to share it with the wider community as well because it feels so important to me. I had come into the coffee enema theory and procedure with some caution because of how sensitive I have been in my life to caffeine. And I'm not really someone who has, had a tendency to go into the direction of these kind of stimulants, of uppers and stimulants. But of course, I have a lot of friends who have worked with caffeine in a variety of ways. But I was just really sensitive to caffeine, and I never was really able to or got into any kind of coffee drinking habit. And I remember that I was, quite skeptical about some of these assertions that the caffeine was not metabolized by the body in the same way when you did a coffee enema as opposed to drinking coffee. And there's a really strong sort of blanket approach on some of the coffee enema support groups, including support groups on Facebook that are really, really clear about this point, and they're really driving home that the effects of, the mood lifting and sort of beneficial effects of the coffee enema have nothing to do with caffeine and everything to do with the upregulation of detoxification in the liver. So the way that a coffee enema is said to work is we have this portal, hepatic veins that connect from the colon back up to the liver. And so there is sort of a direct stream of absorption and information that can get to the liver, which is really cool because you can access the liver more directly through the colon and the rectum. Um, and the coffee, works on filtering, helping sort of filter through the blood supply of the liver. It upregulates glutathione production, and does, a variety of other things. I'm not going to get into teaching about the coffee enema here, but people do have, you know, a lot of mood enhanced abilities and, a variety of benefits that people experience. Um, I was sort of skeptical as I got into coffee enemas because of my experience with caffeine and what I had seen other people going through, especially like some of my loved ones who had a really hard time reducing caffeine intake, reducing coffee intake, and getting off of these substances entirely. Um, so I started really slowly, really conservatively. I was the kind of person who started with a teaspoon and, worked up to a tablespoon and hung out for a while, just, maybe once a week or less coffee enemas. And Vita, come here. Vita, come. Um, And but then in December, partially due to my circumstances and not being able to liver flush as often, I took up I sort of wanted to experiment with more frequent coffee enemas and using that to really increase, the bile production, help with sort of getting the body used to putting out some bile in the morning. And I could still only do coffee enemas in the morning because of the stimulating effects of them. And I thought if I'm really careful with my electrolytes, it's really, really heavy on potassium usage, and other electrolytes. It's really important to be keeping up with those if you are incorporating coffee enemas. And I just thought if I did a really good job of that, maybe I could do daily coffee enemas because I'd heard so many people who have done that or do that as part of their regimen. And I know that I felt better and more clear-headed on days that I did coffee enemas. So I started basically doing daily coffee enemas. It probably was only like a stint of like 2 or 3 weeks. Um, But then at a certain point in my cycle of my sort of monthly cycle and the ways that I rotate my activities that I'm putting my body through, I I I just stopped entirely and I was going to take, a few days off. I developed later that day a really significant headache that came and went, was pretty much there solid for that first day, and then it came again the second day. And I was confused because I have headaches all the time, kind of like a constant. I have variety of tension headaches and sort of brain inflammation headaches, but this one felt distinct. It felt different than that. And I started looking and I was like, yeah, I hadn't even made the connection yet, but then I started looking into it and I was like, this is totally a caffeine headache and it feels very distinct from my regular headaches. That was gone in about 2 days, but I ended up having pretty extreme week of um, pretty severe depression issues and like a really, really downward swing that was actually quite scary and disturbing. Um, and there were a lot of factors, as there always are in my life, including, yeah, moving through Pluto, and approaching my Aquarian birthday, and also like the upcoming full moon that we just passed. But I really do think that a significant factor in my sort of plummeting experience at that time was actually withdrawal from the caffeine of the coffee. And what really frustrates me is that in some of these support groups on Facebook that are revolve around coffee enemas, people ask about the withdrawal symptoms. People ask about the headaches, and literally just blanket, they're told this does not have to do with caffeine. This has to do with the fact that now that you stop doing coffee enemas, your body isn't detoxing as well. And I just think this is bullshit. And and also, like, this is what I see as a pretty blatant form of gaslighting in the community. And I see sensitive people coming on and saying, look, I'm getting affected by the caffeine. And then people are saying, no, you're absolutely not getting affected by the caffeine. That's not happening. This is just about, the way that it's detoxing you. And then on the same hand, I hear people talking about how they're getting high, how they're flying, how they're getting lit by coffee enemas. And I also hear a lot of people, a significant number of people say, I have to do coffee enemas every day. I'm addicted to coffee enemas. I hear people say that. I'm addicted to coffee enemas. They know they won't feel okay if they don't do them. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has their own journey, and perhaps it really is worth it, to someone to that's the only way they are going to be okay. But I wanted to bring this as a cautionary tale because I was only doing daily coffee enemas for a few weeks, and the come down off of that using that tool was really severe for me. And I also want to bring up that I have really close friends who that were coffee drinkers or even caffeine, like switching from coffee to tea and then trying to get off of tea. I saw people struggling for not just short amounts of time, but up to 6 months of pretty extreme, significant depression issues, significant sort of loss of um, interest and spark in life, like the inspiration, and joy. And I've even seen this like literally with coming off of tea, um, and that can be a real struggle over time, serious struggle. And so the fact that I witnessed that and then saw this sort of acute form in myself that really, really shook me, really scared me. I just want people to know that it is possible if you're a long-term user of coffee enemas, that if you're not taking breaks to find out where you're actually where your baseline is at, um, I just don't want anyone to be like rudely awakened by that stopping process, by that withdrawal in a way that's actually dangerous. Um, so I'm going to get into a couple concepts here. One of them is, um, well, just in general, the way that I have studied and learned about caffeine in general, I know this is a really, really widely accepted and embraced by society substance, but it is actually a drug with pretty significant effects on our metabolism, on our body chemistry, on our mental state. And and to put it most simply, since it is a stimulant and it's stimulating the adrenals to basically squeeze out stress hormones and adrenaline to allow us to have a sharper mind and to function more efficiently, more productively, and with more energy. This is actually like the most straightforward way you can look at it is that you are borrowing energy. You are borrowing energy, and the only place really it can come from is from your own future, because those adrenals, that jing, that life force that is squeezed out of the adrenals, that is held there, is that, we have a finite amount. This would be like a Chinese medicine perspective of the jing, is that really there's a finite amount. Um, But in general, it's like you're encouraging your body to perform in a way that is not natural, and eventually that can lead to crashing. Now, um, the other concept I wanted to talk about is this concept of dieta. And the place that I learned about this is in South America, indigenous traditions of working with different plant medicines. Now, a lot of these are not hallucinogenic. They're just like plants from the jungle that you can learn about or work with, or they can help with different kinds of maladies. So, but it sort of translates to dieting something, but in English that's kind of confusing. So, like in my circle of friends, we would, refer to it as dieta, and what that is talking about is a pendulum of experience of both imbibing a substance and fasting from a substance. And why, part of the reason why I see that we would do such a thing is to learn about its effects on our system, and also keep in right relation with that substance. So this can be done with literally any substance. It can be done with food, it can be done with water, it can be done with sleep, it can be done with cannabis or tobacco or um coffee, um sugar, you know, any of these things, all the other things, emotional connections with certain people, different kinds of experiences. So, you know, um, so how we work with this is that there's a period of time where you actually do imbibe the substance, and then there's a period of time where you fast from the substance. And both of these periods are actually significant in terms of getting to know that substance. So, and part of how we get into trouble with substances is that we are often only aware of, if you imagine like a sine curve, we're only aware of like the upswing of this, we'll call it medicine or substance. And then, but we are less aware of the downswing. But this entire curve is is included in the one effect of this substance or medicine. Does that make sense? So it's like the whole swing, up, down, and then back to center, right? Up, down, and then back to center that entire journey is the effect of ingesting that one time of that substance. Now, a lot of times people experience the first part of the wave, and then right about at this point, you start to crave the substance again, and so you ingest more, but you haven't actually experienced or finished the wave of the first time you ingested it, and therefore you are starting to get out of touch with the effect on the organism that this substance has. Because if you only know the first half of the effect, but you aren't aware of the second half, then you really don't know what the substance is or what it is doing to your body. So, one way you can sort of start to play with learning about how these things affect you is to take once, imbibe once, and see how long the wave goes until you get back to baseline. And in general, I was kind of sharing with the group today that one of the things that one of the ways that you would know you're not past the end of the curve is craving for that substance. And I personally have been surprised to find how long different medicines, different substances act in the body. And again, a lot of times we're aware of the sort of positive, sort of stimulating side of things, but then we're less tracking the underswing, the undertow, or the sort of counter swing or drop that that same substance is actually imparting on the organism. So it's just an invitation to, for one, just consider if you're responsibly using um, these different substances and how, what kind of care you're taking for your future self and your future body, but also this invitation to experiment and find for your own self what is the half-life and what is the whole life of this particular effect of this particular substance. And for me, sometimes, I've found that surprising. I know I have a tendency to get addicted to certain things. And so when I have tried to make space in my relationship with that thing, I was like, oh, it actually takes longer than 3 days for my body to be back to baseline. And so then if you can find if you can find the length of the total wave, which it isn't always half and half, you might say, oh, well, by the time that the swing is coming down, that must be halfway, so maybe I could double that. Well, that's a good start, but it's not always 50-50 like that. So just playing around with these things to discover for ourselves um is a really valuable skill to build so that you can learn to modulate your usage of all different kinds of medicine, substances, and experiences so that you are staying responsibly in touch with your baseline and not ending up with kind of extreme and unforeseen circumstances of withdrawal that are going to be really hard to get through, and we see this with so many things, including pharmaceutical drugs. It's one of the reasons I have been so wary of psychiatric drugs, because of seeing people trying to get off of them, or steroids, these things that sort of mask or suppress the state, the actual state. Um, Yeah, it feels good in the short term, but that bounce back can be absolutely brutal and sometimes not survivable for people. So I just wanted to bring this to awareness in a small way with the coffee enemas, just making sure, if this matters to you, if this is a concern to you. I, for myself, I've gotten to a place, over a long time that I know with my level of, with my level of health and adrenal, condition, it's just it's not worth it to me to have to pay back later something that I've borrowed, and so I mean, I'm learning that more and more, I'm still testing the waters all the time, but um it's it's too high of a cost for some of us to be borrowing energy like that. So, I just wanted to jump on here today and share my current outlook on that, some resources that I've used to sort of navigate through finding my relationships with these different things. I hope it was helpful for you. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you find information like this helpful. If you need help getting started with liver flushing, I am here. If you have any questions about detox or support in regenerating the body, I would love to support. I am here, I'm available. And thank you so much for tuning in, and may all beings be liberated. Sienna Songbird signing out. And Vita too. She says goodbye.